Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I am Calen Carpenter. I am joined with my, again, loyal and unable
It's,
to escape, I guess is how I should say it, father, Brandon Carpenter.
how, how about esteemed?
I'll go with esteemed. That's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, you can check us out at our social media posted down below. And if you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, not like, click subscribe, Dad. If you're on Facebook,
You got to
share,
click something.
tell your friends, start joining in on the community. We're trying to build us, not just as like friends and family, but definitely
Everybody.
across the globe. Yeah, we are trying to provide some stuff that we think is good for everybody to know about because agriculture is definitely a global thing. Also, horses, equine as a pleasure experience it's far more of a global thing than one would think.
Oh,
But yeah, I think with that we'll get started. Dad, you said you had some events today that you wanted to start the day off with.
well, let me start first by, you're talking about a global community, I think is exactly right. It's neat to be able to connect with people we already know that we haven't seen in a while
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or new acquaintances, but it is so neat to see posts or people comment from anywhere on the globe.
Oh yeah.
It's just amazing, and the cultural things that and there's one gal really asks some really good questions. They're basic questions. She always says, "Hey, I'm just a city girl, but why?" And it's like, no, it's okay. That's
Those are good
that's
questions.
exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
No,
yeah,
I
so
agree.
it'd be really neat to meet a lot of these people at some point, and just share some stuff. And who are they? What's their background? What do they do? What do they think? That kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, well,
but
and I'll kind of start there too. Is background wise, seeing I don't know if you've seen some of the analytics, but I've looked at countries of where people are from. Okay, never mind.
analytics,
Yeah,
yeah.
the analytics on Facebook, and obviously I think I just looked today. I think we're now up to 528 likes or something like that. It's
Awesome.
a very modest number, but it's come up significantly over the course of the last month, especially with us doing these productions. But the other thing too is, so out of that 500, I think it's probably 470s, 480s are American, but the rest of that is across the globe. And by across the
Well,
globe, I mean I've seen. I think there's 2 or 3 followers from New Zealand. There's one from Georgia, so the Eastern Bloc. I think there might be one from the UK, maybe a couple from the UK, but it's all over. It's really cool.
yeah. And now I think some of those were because I noticed when you said Georgia and
Yep.
Australia, I thought, or New Zealand, okay, and then the UK. Uh, Last spring when we started doing some calving and started just playing to the videos just for fun,
Mm-hmm.
because of the COVID thing hitting, everybody was really looking for entertainment. And if you're looking here, you are bored. But I did the pep talk with the cows the day
Oh
before
yeah.
calving season, right?
There was
And that's where
there's
some
like
of those.
1,500 shares for virtually. Like you went to in our extent, you went viral, but it was mostly in the Western United States. But
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun, and and
mm-hmm.
and people have hung with us,
Yeah.
because we've come up with some goofy stuff, but we've also done some more serious stuff, and I got to do some more goofy stuff because I've been in just a bad mood this last week after it's been a week ago that we sold these calves
Yeah.
and took a freaking hit to the crotch with them, a double kick, um, but then today, I'm still looking for that steer. We lost a steer, wasn't there, couldn't find it. Figured out it was the one that we were actually going to save back for our own purchase or purposes, to butcher, because it was nice big steer. Thing is over 600 pounds, and it didn't show up when we brought all the cows and calves home. I counted the cows because if the adults are there, the calves are there,
Right.
right? Unless you see something that's out of the ordinary, where a cow's got a large bag where she hasn't been nursed for a while, then you got to start looking and say, all right, what's going on there, or something to like. But everybody looked normal, everybody looked good, and didn't see anything out of the ordinary. All the adults were there, and so it's kind of like you count the legs and divide by 4. Everybody's there, so okay, yeah. I mean, so you don't worry about it. The next day we gathered, and your mom and I went ahead and sorted everything. We sorted the replacement heifers off. We should cover that sometime, why we choose what we do with heifers. I don't know, you know, as a replacement, but
Yeah, that, well, that
you
can
know,
be maybe in the shoot or
yeah, we
something.
could do it in the shoot.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
But anyway,
We're also going to start posting ramblings, which have absolutely no effect whatsoever on actually what we're talking about. Sometimes there's nuggets of wisdom in there, but a lot of the times it's either entertainment or you and I complaining about politics. But we could make that a
yeah,
rambling too on YouTube. We'll see.
yeah. But you know, we separated then the steers from heifers that were going to market, and I'm looking at how many steers we had and how I was going to load the trailer up, and I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
We're short a steer. And I thought, well, maybe it got by and it's in with the heifers. And you know, the way we color code everything so you can see it from a distance,
Blue and
you know,
pink.
blue and pink, your mom's two favorite colors, and they work. You know, heifers get pink tags, steers get blue tags.
Well, and during
And
branding, it's super easy because whenever we
oh
have
yeah,
to start, we used to like start marking them with like grease paint, and
right.
now that we've got the tags, we're like, oh, this is easy. This one goes there. This one goes there, and we just kind of wash our hands of it and just
What?
keep going.
Yeah, well, the grease paint, if you remember, all that was just to mark the backs of the heifers, the replacement heifers that we were going to keep,
Oh yeah,
because you know, I mean, we were tagging everything. It was getting a tag, but we just didn't have them separated by sex. So we started doing that and didn't need to. Well, I should not say that because I've got certain numbers that I know which ones I really want to keep. So I've got them marked. All you gotta do is look at the ear tag. But if you're in a whole bunch of them and they're there and you decide, yeah, I want this one, this one, this one, and you're going to really cut deep that way, that grease pencil is the way to go, or just a big old marker, put a big
yeah.
green mark on the back or something. So anyway, yeah, couldn't find the steer. And so we went through all of the replacement heifers. We went through the heifers that were going to sale, counted everybody, and like, oh, we're one short. So yeah, the steer's not there. And so I'm like, all right, which one is it? And we're looking and I'm looking at tag numbers, and I'm, you know, because you basically remember most of who's who, you know.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm going like, wait a minute, our butcher steer is missing. He's not here. So double check again. Sure enough, that was him. He's not anywhere around. So like, all right, well, and we probably, oh God, we squandered a half hour, 45 minutes just trying to get that figured out, you know, where he was or if we lost it, whatever it was. And decided, well, you know what, he's not going anywhere anyway. So let's get this done. And we shipped all the cows to, or got them down into the sale yards that night. We finished up about 8 o'clock, I guess, or so. One of those early, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night deals. But,
Yeah, the bad roads starting out didn't help you out,
oh
but I mean, at
yeah,
least I was glad that once mom sent me a message, she's like, "Oh, roads are better." I was like, "Okay, they'll probably be able to finish it then today," because I thought for sure if you couldn't get the second load in by like 6 o'clock, I was like, "You're gonna have to call it quits for the night and try to
no,
send it." No,
I was going to go to, if it took till 11 o'clock, I was going to get it done.
mom was gonna hate you.
Well, yeah, that's true. Good point. Yeah, I work her too hard, I think. Sometimes I'll realize that, oh, I didn't stop for lunch and she was along with me and she didn't say anything, but she's not happy. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but anyway, got everything done. And then that afternoon after the sale, then I went back up to the ranch. I wanted to see these calves sell and did. And then went back to the ranch and grabbed a horse that I'm training and went over to that pasture. And there was snow coming in. There was a storm going to happen again. It was, you know, just we got lucky that day between. And I started riding, looking for this steer. And I'm assuming he's dead at that point. It's like, okay, he could be through the fence to the neighbor's place. I mean, that happens.
yeah.
Just had a heifer end up on us this week. So, but still, you want to find him. You know, it's good to have him home. And I rode that 2,000 acre pasture. There's 3 square miles in there, and I'm riding along and I'm hitting all of the normal spots that if an animal's sick, it usually goes to water, right? And it will stay fairly close to water and it will die there. Well, 2 weeks prior was the start of antelope season, and that's this piece of property. There's leases in what's block management area for the fishing game where they allow hunting in there. That nobody can drive in. They're just supposed to walk in. And I thought, well, I'm going to check everything. And I did the weekend after hunting season started, like that Monday. on Monday or Tuesday anyway. And I just happened to find some carcasses dumped on us. And there was an antelope that was shot the week before. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake. So I thought, well, I'll give the warden a call and talked with him. I think we were on the phone for actually quite a while because, we used to work for the outfit and I never met him, but we were just kind of catching up on people I knew, and have just a decent conversation. And I told him, I said, yeah, well, I'm going to ride out through these cows. I got to get going. And I just want to account for everybody. And I did. Everybody was there. Everybody looked good. We had preconditioned probably the week before that. And so we're all happy and giddy. So I get on this horse and I go out after the sale and storm's coming in, but I'm able to ride. I rode, I think about 7 or 8 miles altogether that afternoon and evening. Well, I rode till dark and then the storm was coming in. I was trying to beat the snow. And so, those days when you're outside and even though you got your hat on and your brim's pulled down a little bit and the snow is hitting you in the face and it just stings.
Yeah.
It was one of those days. And like you're horseback and you're going into the wind. It was an east wind. So I'm going all the way into it. There's nothing you can do.
Of course. And I'm sure the horse was looking back at you in the corner of the eye going, why are we doing this right now?
She was unhappy. Yeah. And then it's getting dark and, my hands weren't horrible, but my toes were so I mean, they were, you get cold enough, they just ache. And so I was like that. And, but I rode a significant amount of that acreage and, there was no snow coming in. I went, okay, might as well quit. It's dark anyway, or getting so dark I can't see. And the snow's coming in. I'd have to walk around on top of something to be able to find it.
Right.
And so headed back to, I'd actually taken a trailer out there because I was just trying to hurry and gain as much time as I could instead of riding the, half hour or so over there. Well, as I'm just getting ready or pulling up close to the pickup and trailer, here comes a pickup. It's a neighbor that guy we've known him for, oh Jesus, I don't know, 30 some years anyway. And him and his wife pulled in. They'd been out elk hunting. She had a tag and they saw me and he's like, "What are you doing?" Because earlier in the summer I found some toad flax out on this property on this lease. So I went, and I had mixed up some chemical and I went out there on a 4-wheeler. You know how I am with 4-wheelers and yeah, I hate them. But I got a little spray tank on it and some boom arms. And I went in there and I was putting a death wish on this noxious weed. And as I go back by, I'm talking June, as I'm going by, I see him wave, go by his house. And so I backed up and went in there and we sat there and I don't know, we BS'd for an hour. And he's giving me crap about riding a motorcycle or a 4-wheeler. I was like, yeah, God, I was hoping I could get away with nobody see me riding this stupid thing because I hate them.
What's funny is you rode the motorized horse in the best weather possible, and then you took the actual horse and you decided to do that in the worst weather possible.
That's exactly what he said.
Oh, look at that.
He questions my sanity because of it. He's like, what's the deal,
Yep.
Nah.
Not just a hat rack, my friends.
Yeah, well, I still hate them freaking motorized 4-wheelers, side-by-sides, whatever. I just don't like them. Anyway, so we stood there and his wife was like, she saw me and I'm not going to complain, and she goes, you got to be freezing because my mustache was just nothing but ice.
Yeah, I was going to say super frosted over and just icicles.
Yeah. Ice on my I could feel my eyelashes were freezing together, that kind of stuff. And we're standing there and he had just gotten back and he goes, you want a beer? I'm like, it's like 20 degrees and the temperature is just plummeting. And I'm like, nah, I better not. I'm just,
I was gonna say, even if it's a bad beer, the colder it gets, the better it gets. So
it was bad beer. Yeah. I told him it was like, I don't remember, it was like Bush Light or something. And I said, that's
you want that about 20 or 10 degrees is perfect for Bush Light because there's no flavor to it.
Well, yeah, but I told him I only drink that kind of beer when I'm in the shower so that I don't stand a chance of getting it watered down too much.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah. So anyway, I got done with that and it's like, hey, we got a bunch of snow and you can't do a thing until the snow clears because you could, it's just covered everything and there's enough yucca plant out in there and some big, mounds and stuff that you're never going to find it. So today happened to work out pretty well where we got a Chinook wind. It was like 61 degrees, and God, it was still 30. Well, it was 27 degrees this morning at about 8-9 o'clock. Then the wind started blowing. It was calm. The wind started blowing. Typical Chinook wind, that you would expect. You got to 61 degrees and the wind's blowing like 15, 20 mile an hour. It's just howling.
Yeah.
And I went along the waterways, nothing there. Went along where they would walk, lots of trails, high impact areas where they would be. Couldn't find them anywhere. And so I started kind of a grid pattern, and actually the horse smelled him before I did, which big surprise. I mean, I've got like a permanent case of coronavirus because my sniffer doesn't work too well. It's about as good as yours. So
mine's a little bit better.
Yeah, mine's horrible. Mine's really bad. I've been able to smell since I broke my nose so many times. But anyway, we wandered around that, and I finally found the skull. I could see where the gut pile had been because all of the paunch of grass was laid out there.
Yeah.
And few rib bones, found a little bit of the spine, found the skull. Couldn't find anything obvious like any bullet wounds in the skull or anything. Jaws still attached, some red hair, but not a lot of red hair. I mean, it's kind of surprising. I couldn't find a pelvis or long bones, or leg bones.
Well, and it's only been a week, right?
Well, it's been probably it's been a week since the sale, but it was probably a week or 10 days prior to that. That's the window. And it doesn't take coyotes or birds long to clean up a carcass.
Yeah, that's
fair. But I still couldn't find long bones, which, all right. But I found the shoulder blades, and I was like, well, okay. But still, again, no long bones, no legs, and no pelvis. And that's a significant chunk of bone, and I'm like, what's going on? So I couldn't see any obvious saw marks for the head. Of course it is taken off at the atlas axis. So some part of the spine's there. The first thing you think about is, has it been basically processed in the field? The backstrap's been taken, the shoulder's been taken, and then
did somebody essentially quarter it and throw it in the back of a 4-wheeler and drive off or something? Yeah,
but it kind of was funny with the front shoulders being gone or still there, unless they hit it and ruined a bunch of meat, and we're only after the hindquarters and the backstraps. And you can't really see any knife marks. These are some of the forensic stuffs that I used to look at when I was, working a job. And I couldn't find any knife marks on them.
On bone or anything like that.
It's been long enough that, the ribs are starting to scatter, spine's starting to scatter, and stuff like that. So it was kind of, nothing. I mean, we're not going to get compensated for it, I'm sure. I went and called the warden and called the brand inspector, and he said, yeah, if I can't tell that it was killed by a hunter, then no. But the funny thing is, it's on a spot. It was kind of down on the bottom of a ridge, below a ridge top where you would sneak on something, and shoot. But not anywhere where an animal that normally would be sick would hang out, close to water again. It's out in the middle, and it's in the middle of this right, almost in dead center of the two sections that run north and south. So, and I don't know. It's and with at least I know where it's at now.
With the weather that occurred too, that means you're probably not going to be able to pick up any track, whether it be wolf, mountain lion, human.
Oh no!
So there's no way you can tell if it was a natural or unnatural.
Well,
cause of
no.
death.
And now the interesting part is there were some tire tracks to it, and that right at that area, and then kind of flipped around and left. You see which way the grass was laid down, but that was done before the snow. You can tell by the track, the snow has kind of dulled the track a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can't see tire track real well. You can see where it went through like some molehills, some fresh dirt, but it was before the snow. So you're talking again, 10 days ago, easily 10, 12 days before today. So that kind of narrows the window up a little bit more, where there's about a 5-6 day window in there somewhere from the time I checked them all till that first snow, somewhere in there. But tracks to it, and I followed them out, and I went ahead and put it on the camera, and I'll probably post it. But it's just one of them deals. How does a 600+ pound healthy steer just decide to die?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that's why, and for anybody that's watching, I bring up wolf and mountain lion. Wolf more so than mountain lion because we're not really in mountain lion territory. We are, but it's just where the ranch is. It's not near a lot of rims or a lot of trees where a mountain lion might be. Um,
yeah, not. It's kind of between spots.
yeah,
So they would have to range from one side to the other. But yeah,
yeah. They'd
probably
be
not.
definitely
It's not like
it'd be definitely a cat traveling is what it would be. It'd be
right.
a transit, but we've definitely had wolf. Whether officials want to agree with it or not, we've definitely had wolf. I have seen tracks. You have seen tracks.
Yeah.
Grandpa
Saw 'em.
saw the actual animal multiple
Right.
times.
Right.
There was one specific wolf that he had seen a couple times, not just multiple, a couple of them going through. And again, they're for the most part they're probably passing through because with the amount of population increasing, I finally got a chance to listen to Mark and Paul, the Breakfast Flakes. So anybody around Billings, they know who they are, but they're essentially two personalities that have been on the air in the Billings area for almost 30 years.
30 plus years.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable the longevity these two guys have had. Yeah.
yeah, and
Really
I
popular.
that's one of the things I've really missed growing up because I used to go to school and stuff like that. I would hear them on the way to school, and I for whatever reason following them on Facebook, I saw a link where I could pick up a app and have it on my phone. So now in the mornings when I go to work, I can listen to Mark and Paul. That's awesome. But they were talking about today about how they've been delisted wolves. They've been delisted because the population has just boomed, and we're like, yeah, you're about 5-7 years too late. Like
Too
we've been
late.
telling you for a
10,
long time. Yeah,
10 years.
yeah. But I ask wolf specifically for those who are asking or who are watching because um, I've seen one horse for sure. There was no doubt it was wolf kill because what had happened was it had been chased down, run into a fence, buried under the fence, and then tortured to death. That was that'll be a conversation we can have later because I was just looking through some of our clips, but another horse that we found on Christmas Day dead. Um,
Right.
you
That
know,
was Christmas Day. That's
yep.
right.
Like there's days in the ranching life and I'm sure the farm life too where you're dealing even with crops and stuff. It's just Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, they're not always joyous occasions. There's also
There's
really
just another
crappy
day.
experiences. Yeah, it's just another day. But my point is I bring up wolf because we've seen the effects of it and it's a very real thing in Montana. When people say it's not a wolf, they either haven't seen it or they're lying. And that's really the only thing. Like there's no in between because they just don't know or they just are so oblivious to the facts and so unwilling to be a part of the conversation that they won't accept that there are wolves out there preying on lambs, preying on horses, preying on cows. I don't know what they do with the hog population. I'm sure the hogs are more indoors and kind of confined,
Yeah, no.
but I mean they ravage agriculture, especially in Idaho. Idaho's I know been getting hit a lot. Western Wyoming because they border the Tetons,
Right.
um, and then obviously South Central Montana, Southwestern Montana, and then now they're starting to expand more and more outward because of their population in the park.
Well, we're in South Central Montana, and the first wolf kill, the one that was without doubt on that Christmas Day, that would have been 10, 12 years ago, probably. And then we had a filly killed
I
about
was gonna say probably
2 years
10
later.
years. 10. It's 2020. Yeah, I would have been sophomore, junior. Yeah,
Yeah,
sophomore probably high school.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, they're there. There's no doubt they're there. And just because they were delisted doesn't mean that wasn't plumb full of politics. That wasn't like everybody went, "Hey, okay, yeah, we all
Right.
agree."
Right.
No, that was a fight, and you got an activist judge that is blocking with his rulings every step of the way to keep these wolves on the protected list, the endangered species list. So it's not without controversy. And when I reported that first one, that first kill we had, and I looked at stuff like that, how mountain lions kill, how wolves kill, and this was not a pack of coyotes; it was a wolf.
No. Yeah.
And
And it was a single wolf too. There was
yeah,
no
that was
doubt there was a single wolf
Yeah, he was just smart enough to and opportunistic enough. He used the fence
Yep.
and took care of business. But uh, when I contacted the state agency, they're like, "No, there's no wolves there," because they don't want to deal with it.
It's
It's like,
easier to
no,
write it
oh
off
yeah,
and say
you're
no.
wrong. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I used to kind of work for you and used to
Yeah.
do investigations like this, but okay, I get it. You don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
And so they will deny until they deny to the point where you can't deny it anymore. And then they're like, well, we're finally seeing a sudden surge in population. Things just lined up right. It's like, you liars.
Yeah.
They're just so freaking corrupt. It makes me mad.
And I don't know. I don't really want to go down this rabbit hole too far because in college I literally had an entire class on this, and we lasted. It was a 400 level class, and it was a once a week class. So we had a solid 3 hour block to discuss amongst graduate students and undergraduate students, and we spent the entire 3 hour block talking about wolves, their part in especially Montana, because the class was about Yellowstone National Park. So at the end of the class, it was actually our last class, we talked about the wolves, because the wolves are the most recent happening essentially of Yellowstone National Park. And like I said, we used up the entire 3 hours. We could have gone easily another 3 hours. There were so many people divided in there. And I told him, I was like, listen, I come from a ranching background, and here's how I see it. Like, yes, are the wolves, is there a place for them in the ecological system?
Sure.
I don't disagree with that. But what I do disagree with is these wolves that were introduced were not the original ones that were originally around here. Nope. They were never in the mountains to begin with. The ones that are here came from Canada, which is where they're native, which is
great gray wolf. Yep.
A gray wolf, which is essentially a timber wolf.
Which is a killing machine.
Oh yeah. The wolves that were around this area in the Montana area were called prairie wolves, much smaller, a little bit bigger than a coyote, and a pack would definitely go for a bigger animal like an elk or a buffalo or something like that. Now you'll see a pack go for a buffalo or an elk, but they can take 2 or 3 of those things if they really try at a time. Now, granted, they're going to always put their energy together to get the one, but they are killing machines, and that's why it's become such a big issue, especially with ranchers, because the prairie wolf was extinct. And I know you've talked about this before. One of our ancestors was what they call a wolfer, and he went out there and killed them. But
yeah, Uncle Floyd, great uncle Floyd was a wolfer.
And I don't know, I'll digress, but essentially I think we can have a whole conversation on this on another day. But there's a lot of stuff going in there, and I'm actually fairly knowledgeable in it. So if somebody just calls me BS on things, like, I'll pull up the historical records and the books that I've got in my back room, and we can talk about it. But yeah, we'll move on. So
yeah,
I guess the next thing is let's go to another controversial topic. What is it? Wild horse campaign, I think is what it is.
Okay.
They're on Facebook. Somebody, you can please, by all means, go and look them up. It's Wild Horse Campaign or Wild Horse Association. I can't quite remember. Here's what I'll tell you what they do. What they do. I follow a lot of different things on both Twitter and Facebook, both right-leaning and left-leaning. You can categorize this particular association or I think it's a campaign, Wild Horse Campaign, as a left-leaning. It's a horse sanctuary type organization, and the thing is what they do is they are essentially looking out for wild mustangs and the horses that are out there and feral, and they're just kind of hanging out doing their own thing like a deer or an elk or a buffalo would right now. The problem is this has also helped relate to, well, let me back up for a second. Everybody agrees horses are pretty cool. They're I'm just gonna throw it out there. It's like everybody looks at a horse and they don't think food, they think pet. I mean, that's I think a pretty accepted norm for Western culture.
Well, I don't think it's just Western culture. I've said for years when I've taught clinics that if you look everywhere on the entire planet,
Uh-huh.
every culture reveres the horse
Yeah.
as, and I boil it down to something that's very free, but
Yeah.
very powerful.
It's romantic.
That man, yes, it's very romantic, but something that man has been able to conquer or contain. Something that big, that powerful, and that free, and man is enamored with it, with a
Yeah.
horse. And it doesn't matter where in the globe you're at, where there are horses. It's the same. It's the same kind of reverement, if that's a word.
No, I think you're absolutely right, because and these are great topics to go down to at a later time, but you look at significant names in history, Genghis Khan,
Right.
huge,
Genghis.
or sorry, Genghis Khan,
Yeah.
huge in the equine, and especially who developed stirrups? It was him. We can tell you about that later. Uh, the Middle Easterners, they not only tamed and domesticated camels, but they also did horses as well. And horses
Right.
are very useful. The entire when nations finally figured out how to, well, I guess peoples, once they started figuring out how to use the horse in Europe, man, they started conquering things like crazy. Then you
Right.
got they went over to England, the Romans. They were not only using their infantry, but then their cavalry to just destroy the Celts and the Irish and the Scots. And then
Well, at the time, they were the equivalent of what
it's a tank.
a tank would be today, right?
Yeah, and then that's where I'm headed to, is you go to the medieval times, and your cavalry was your tank. Don't unhorse a knight, because God forbid that happens, because once he's off of his horse,
He's
he's a
done.
sitting duck. He's so
Yeah.
slow in his armor that you would go for him, and that's exactly what they would do. But then you go forward to
There's a whole evolution of the saddle
oh,
based
absolutely.
on that, on knights and their
Yeah.
armor and an upgrade in weaponry in order to kill a knight who is on a horse.
Yeah.
Neat stuff.
Well, and I tell you what, I was showing Braden this, and one of the coolest episodes I've ever seen, and probably the most historically accurate for how a battle occurs, both infantry and cavalry, is if you go on Game of Thrones and you look up Battle of the Bastards, where the two armies just clash and the bodies just collide, both equine and man. It's truly, the word awesome is what you would use. It's just, you sit there in awe of what happens, and that's exactly what happened for hundreds of thousands of years of just people going at it with using the horse. And then
Well, it changed battle tactics.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely. It's really cool. I'm a history guy, so obviously I'm just gonna nerd out on this stuff, but I'll kind of move on. Like, we've gone to, the horse was a tool and a necessity, but at the same time, especially you look at Genghis Khan, what did those guys do? They would fight on their horses, they would conquer a people, and then at night they slept with their horses. Their horses
Right.
were their lifeline. That's how they moved on the steppe of the both the Eastern Europe and Western Asia, and that's how they would move across.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but mare's milk is one of their staples.
Yes.
Or staples for their food intake.
Fermented mare's milk, yeah.
And fermented mare's milk is their drink. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is it just, and then you go towards the Western culture, which is what you and I are more familiar with, and you've got the romantic version of the cowboy sitting out there sleeping next to his horse, and the cavalryman doing the exact same thing, and then of course the Native American, the more horses you had, the richer of a man you were, and stuff like that. And so we've always seen, not only is the horse a tool and a machine that was great for the evolution of man, but it's also this pet, this very close thing to us. And nobody ever wants to talk about the bad things, which is where, full circle to what I started off with, is these feral animals. You especially look at Nevada and Utah, the ground is getting run down to absolutely nothing. And I want to tell you what, you go to manage an ecosystem, especially your own ecosystem, as a rancher or a farmer. You're always making sure, I don't have too many bodies on this piece of ground, otherwise I will destroy it, right? I go too many bodies, it turns into dirt, then I can't create grass to help feed those animals, then I end up paying more out of my pocket because of hay and supplements.
Well, it turns the ground to weeds, and you got
absolutely
erosion, and
right.
all kind, especially in this country, the wind we have.
Yeah, there's secondary and tertiary effects that go with it, and so you're always taking care of your own piece of ground. But essentially what has happened is with these wild horses, that's not happening. And where we as conservationists and as hunters and whatnot, we limit the populations of deer, elk, antelope, all these other animals that are available for hunting. We don't do it with horses, and I wish we would. And maybe not for necessarily hunting, but open up slaughter plants again, which there are no slaughter plants. And you go to Nevada and whatnot, and people are just letting horses go because they either can't afford it or whatnot. And then the horses, it's like, have you ever hit a moose? Imagine hitting a moose. That's a horse, right?
Right.
And people are hitting horses out on these highways, and it's not only killing the horse, but then it's killing people and causing damage. So you're looking at the environmental impact, and then the impact on people and their vehicles, and it causes this big issue that I wish we could continue with slaughter plants, because one, we could eat the meat. I'll eat horse. I've never tried it, but I'll be up for it. You can use the hooves and the bones just like you do with cows for gelatin, for fertilizer and stuff like that. I think sanctuaries are a great idea, but in practice, there's causing a lot of other problems.
Well, there's something to be said for using it as a management tool for the old of age. I mean, there's a lot of geriatric horses. None of us live forever. All of us are susceptible to death because of age.
Right.
And then, when they shut down the slaughter plants or slaughter facilities in the States, in the US, completely political, total along political lines, and pressure from those that want to never kill a horse. Well, guess what was happening? When you have no outlet for that horse to go, as far as a humane end to their life, meaning, what, this animal's going to die. Let's take it. We'll take it and slaughter it. It can be used as pet food as well. So that created more of a market in Canada. And Canada's not, they're unapologetic. A lot of their culture, especially the east coast of Canada, the more French culture that's there, that's what they do. They eat horse.
And thank God, because there's been times where, to be frank, we don't keep every single horse we've got, just because there's times where we're saying either it's unsafe or whatnot, and we take them, we say we're going to throw them through the ring, and essentially they go to the stockyard like we did the other day, and that's where the horse gets run through, and
same stockyards the cattle go through, basically. That's right.
And they'll get thrown through, and we'll say they're going to the canner. What does that mean? They're literally about to go be horse meat in a dog food can. That's what it means. Frankly. And
we have done that on some, because how many crazy people do you know?
Quite a bit, actually.
Okay. Maybe I should have rephrased that differently, but there are sometimes there are crazy horses, and I've always said it's where the wiring on this horse, you got the green wire plugged into the red hole. This ain't working.
It happens to people. It happens to dogs. It happens to cats. It happens to horses. It happens to every animal out there. Yeah.
And so you cannot, you in good conscience cannot sell a horse to somebody that is not safe. Right. I won't do it. So as a responsible breeder, we have to make sure that these animals are sound, and that's sound of mind as well. So we've taken stuff and put it through the ring, and I have literally put slaughter only on the ticket, so that somebody knows, this is not an animal that somebody needs to spend their time with and take a chance on breaking a leg, breaking an arm, getting killed. Don't do it. So
that's the responsible answer, and that's what
right. But no, you're right. And when the slaughter industry quit in the States, you were seeing animals around, for instance, Salt Lake City area, big metro area, but still the Wasatch Mountains and some of those areas where they have a lot of ability to go and recreate horseback. Great. They're finding horses turned loose, no brands, no way to identify them. They're freaking running down the interstate, talk about a hazard. Or they'll find them dead somewhere, and they'll have patches where a brand was at with the hide cut off. It's like, God, are you kidding me? So look at the secondary effect of that is. Just because you want to feel good about this is what we shouldn't do to this majestic animal. Well, I agree the animal's majestic, but you know what? There are some instances where they're not. And towards the end of life is one of them. When you're crazy, that's another one. there are issues there, and there's issues where something can happen to an animal where they would never be physically sound. There's
Right.
another instance, right?
No, that's
So
a very good point, because there's definitely been times we have one that I think you donated to a local group that they don't ride him, but they use him as like a therapy horse because
right,
he got a really bad cut on his foot.
yep,
He's a great animal. I really wanted to train him, but we just thought better not, because we didn't know how, we say sound, but essentially safe, not just for him physically, but also for others physically. I would say I have a horse. She's been in two significant injuries, one in her shoulder and one in her hind hip. She lost a big chunk of flesh. And my grandfather essentially took the time to doctor her and heal her back up. And
yeah,
I finished training her, but she's not sound to ride. Why do I say that? Because physically on that shoulder injury, it's kept her from being able to walk on a regular basis. So what happens is about every probably 10th step, she'll stumble on that leg. So even me, when I was lighter, I was about 165, 170, she would still trip. And for a horse, that's not a lot of weight. So she's trained to be able to ride, but she's not rideable because it's probably, especially if you go in the mountains, it's dangerous not only for her, but dangerous for whoever's going to ride her. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about having a sound horse. And you don't want to just take that horse that we've donated to these people as like a halter broke animal that they can pet and love and just enjoy and use as like a therapy individual, like you would or a therapy animal, like a therapy dog or a therapy cat, I guess, if anybody has one of those.
therapy cat.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen them, but
That's some
yeah,
crazy stuff
the
there.
but really, like that's what we mean by using
Yeah,
an unsound animal for a good purpose. Now there was no problem with him mentally or personality
right,
wise, so it was better to donate him to that non-charity group and have them use him for a productive purpose than it was to just send him to the canner.
right. Or I think you meant charity group.
What did I say?
It's non-charity,
I meant
non-profit.
non-profit. Yeah,
Yeah,
I put two things together. Yeah.
I knew what you meant, but we need to clarify that anyway. But anyhow, no, that's right. And I don't know. I have never specifically asked to eat horse,
I
but
would.
I'm pretty dang sure I have. The grain of the meat was much larger than cow. It was real different,
Oh
a
yeah.
little different taste of like this might be horse.
If it
You
was,
know,
what did it taste like?
very much like a you think about a roast,
Yeah.
roast, and it was a little bit sweeter, seemed to
Huh.
be.
Okay.
Um, it was relatively tender.
Yeah.
It was not
I'm
bad.
sure it would
Almost like
be.
a roast meat that had been sliced.
I would think it would be somewhere uh, like lean wise. I would think it'd be somewhere between like venison and beef. That's kind of how
Yeah,
I would think of.
I would guess so too. I haven't had enough of it to tell, but what I had was fairly lean.
Yeah.
It was not a very fatty animal at all.
If I ever go to Canada and I have a chance to try horse, I'll definitely do it.
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah.
Worth it.
I mean, I think you probably go if you went south of the border. I bet you could find it there too. But
That's
and
possibly.
they were also the Mexican, Central, South America. They all revere the horse
Oh yeah.
just as much as we do.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know. It's a thing where I think, and I realize I'm calling out the Wild Horse Campaign or Association, whatever they are, but my point is, I think their heart is probably in the right place, and I have absolutely no doubt about that. What I think the issue is, because here's where the other problems come in. They show videos of them using of the BLM. When I say them, the
Bureau of Land Management.
yes, not Black Lives Matter. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Bureau of Land Management. They use like the little Robinson helicopters and stuff, and they're flying in to bring Mustangs into corrals where they do an annual, or based on what they're doing, maybe a semi-annual or even a quarterly roundup. And what's a roundup is when they bring in either vehicles, other like men on horseback or women on horseback, and helicopters, and they rush these horses into corrals, they trap them, and essentially it's their way of population management.
Right.
And I don't, here's a question. I know they'll take them and they'll sell them, and essentially people can buy them and then they can train them or keep them, whatever they want, put them in their own sanctuaries. But do they also
Right.
do uh what is it? Essentially birth control with the females? I don't know if they. I thought they did for some reason.
I that's interesting because I
Sterilization.
worked with, well, not necessarily sterilization, but I worked when I was in college. I did some research, which is, we could always hit that sometime too. Myself and another student were published in the American Journal of Equine Veterinary Science about using metabolites from urine and fecal samples to be able to tell whether or not mares were pregnant. We can do that with the urine. We've been doing that with our humans for, God, decades. Well, you can do it in horses also for urine, but have you ever tried to collect a urine sample on a mare?
I don't think it would be easy because
It's
especially those guys, because and look at that, I just got a last minute election text from Steve Bullock. That's wonderful.
Oh.
Jesus, I'm sick and tired of these election texts.
Oh, I can't wait for them to go away.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point to this is we can now we were able to identify how to tell whether mares were pregnant or not pregnant through fecal samples, which are way easier to collect, right?
So you can do it through fecal matter, not just urine matter or urine.
30 years ago, we did that. We were the ones who broke ground on that with Dr. J. Kirkpatrick.
So how'd you figure that out? Just blunt force trauma to the head until you found out you could get more proteins or something from it, or what?
Actually, what we did is you could through using the urine samples with immuno. Oh my God, the word's escaping me. It's on our website anyway. The article is
Hashknifehorses, right? .com.
Yeah, or TennesseeWalkers.com.
Yeah, check us
articles.
out.
Go to articles and it's there. But what we did is we collected urine and fecal samples on mares, 5 non-breeding mares. Started, or maybe we ended up with 4, but anyway, we started with 5. One dropped out because they took her away. So I was like, well, they're riding their mares, right? So we would collect urine and fecal samples on these mares every other day for 3 months. So you can imagine what my life was like for 3 months on this pasture. We got pretty familiar with these mares. Once we even caught us, catching it right out of the spout, But we associated the fecal samples and the proteins for like the progesterone, that kind of stuff. Can you hear the dog?
Yeah.
That's Braden's dog in the background.
I was gonna say, is that your grandpuppy?
My grandpuppy, yes. Jesus. And so we correlated the fecal and urine samples together with these metabolites and plot them so that you could tell the estrus cycle of these mares. And we published it. It was actually pretty dang cool. But anyway, the J. Kirkpatrick, Dr. J, was all over the world doing basically birth control in elephants in Africa, Australia. He was down there. I mean, kangaroos, they're doing all kinds of stuff with, and they were giving them a shot basically with like a dart, and they were suppressing, just as if you're using birth control pills in some of these wild populations to try to control them that way too. Yeah. So they weren't doing super invasive, with, ovary removal or anything like that. They were just testing them like that and had some great success in some areas, but
I think we're losing you. Yeah, I like where you're going though. The big thing is the Wild Horse Campaign Association. They essentially, I think what they've done is they do a good job. But what they do is, let me see if I can switch this to just show myself real quick. Sorry, this is doing this, folks. We're trying to, I think what happened, my father's Wi-Fi is not very good. And what's happening is there we go. Yeah, I lost him. So they're essentially, what happens is they're their campaign is, I think, very well meaning, and it's got a good way of trying to kind of save the horse and take care of those wild animals and whatnot. But then those campaigns also, the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, comes in and they try to essentially uh, mitigate and manage those populations, much like we do with hunting, except they don't do it with hunting. What they'll do is they'll gather those animals and then they'll sell them for cheaper price. And that's why you'll see a lot of horses on their mane, on their neck. You'll see a lot of freeze brands, and those freeze brands are a lot of the times markers that they'll essentially just mark that it was a wild Mustang and whatnot, and that you now have control of it. And that's their way of kind of again of managing the population without actually killing the animals like we're talking about. And kind of wrap it all up. The campaign and whatnot has I think they, again, their heart is in a good place, but I think they're so narrow focused on trying to save those animals that they don't see those secondary and tertiary effects we're talking about, ecological, economic, and actually for the animal itself. I would argue they're maybe being a little selfish. And I know Dad's kind of listened to me the last probably 30 seconds. Your Wi-Fi sucks, and so I went on a monologue
Sorry.
for a second.
That's all right.
No, it's okay. That it was kind of good because I think I tied everything together. Hopefully, knock on wood. But I was just saying, managing the population is really what the BLM has done. Again, Bureau of Land Management has done, because they don't have the option of going out and hunting these animals like we do with horse or with deer, elk, and whatnot. But their way of doing it is rounding them up, selling them, and then trying to, like you were talking about, provide a little bit of maybe birth control or whatever they're doing. They're trying to do some sort of suppressant to keep them from reproducing. And I don't know. I would think that you already tag bears and wolves. They've got the aircraft available with the small helicopters. Wouldn't you think that it might be easier to pick select studs or stallions that are out there and just castrate them?
Well, you probably could, but you don't control a population by controlling the males of the population anyway.
I understand that, but at the same time, the gestation for a horse is 11 months. It's almost a year. Whereas if you knocked a stallion out of the mix, he suddenly can't produce, let's say 20 mares, and you've just taken 20 foals out of the picture for at least a year, right?
Provided you don't have another stallion that's covering those mares.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you. It's a tricky business. I wonder if they do both though, because I think trying to do both might actually help.
Well, and they do, and I have trained some wild Mustangs that were mares and had been gelded, but after they had been captured, marked, because they usually freeze brand a neck brand.
And I talked about that. They kind of got those markings that go down. It almost looks like an Asian look to it, the way they mark.
Well,
them.
That's partly because of the hair, but I think you got a alphanumeric type code that they put on them, and I don't know the code. Didn't matter. I never really looked into it, but they can identify that specific animal from where it was at, that and what year, that kind of stuff. But the thing about is a difference between hunting in deer, elk, bear, like you were talking about, and horses is we anthropomorphize horses much more than we do. They almost are almost to the pet category sometimes. So
that's why I brought that up earlier, because we always think of them as our buddy, they're our pet. We go out there and that's my buddy. I get to ride my buddy, but that's my buddy. I'm not going to eat my buddy. Why would I do that?
Right. Exactly. So in order to make that happen as a population control measure that you would hunt them, I don't see that ever happening. That just, I've had to put horses down, and I know them, or I'll do it for somebody else as humanely as you possibly can. But you know what? It's still tough for me to put a horse down. I mean, it's just, it's because it's the same as putting your dog down. It is very difficult because you are so attached to them. Now I can put down cows much easier.
Oh yeah.
You know,
They're
not an
just
issue.
dumb. So I think that's a good point because cows are dumb, and I think unless it's ears, nobody really cares.
Well,
Really,
they're dumb when you don't want them to be, and they're really smart when you don't want them to be smart.
I
So
wish I could just physically abuse them sometimes. I never would, but I wish I could because God, I hate cows sometimes. There's just times you question everything in life, and a cow brings that out.
But don't think I haven't wanted to stick some lead in them before when they're just yeah, it's ugly.
But I think that the point you brought up of putting a horse down or making that decision of I need to go do this, use my firearm as a tool to end a life for a reason. I think that goes to kind of our point with the issues they're having and that they saw in Nevada and Utah is, not everybody has a bone pile. So a lot of, ranches, we've got a bone pile. We have a certain corner in the ranch where we take an animal and it's either been dead and we take the body and we just lay it out there and there'll be wolves, birds, whatever, coyotes.
Yeah.
They just eat it out, and by the time,
Typically it's calves that don't make it during spring calving.
But then there's been times where an old horse,
Yep.
we walk them out there and we take care of business and we just leave them there. And the next thing we know, there's just a skeleton one day. And not everybody has that opportunity. And I think that's why you've come to the issues that we've seen with the lack of slaughter plants is because, people have to dispose of the body in a way that's best for them, but they can't just go shoot their horse and leave the body to sit there.
Well, and typically when we do that with an older horse, it's like a dog.
Oh, yeah.
You care about that animal because you've had them for a long time and they've been part of your breeding program and really your family. We think of them like that too, and we shouldn't, but we do because it's a horse.
Yeah.
But we watch that animal, and as it gets older, we're like, you know what? Okay, they are nearing the end of their life. And when it's time, you make that decision. It's okay. It's painful for them to exist physically for themselves.
Or we know where they're about to go, and we'd rather just do it before things get bad.
Humanely is absolutely possible. Yeah, that's right. So,
which I guess that's a good way to end it. But I think that's something. I saw something about euthanasia on a ballot somewhere, not in Montana because that's not what I voted on this year, but. I had a great grandmother who, bless her soul, she always said we treat animals better than humans because we let them die when they want to or when they need to, and we don't let adults do that. And that is probably why I hope someday euthanasia does become a thing for humans, because as long as it's voluntary and that's what the person wants, I think that's what we should do, because she was absolutely right. We treat animals far better when we know they are in pain and something needs to be done to just end it. It's not going to be solved through treatment and whatnot. We just take care of it for them. I wish we could do that for humans. I really wish we could, but.
Well, and there's a lot to be said about that. I mean, we could do a whole subject on that as well, but who makes that determination?
It needs to be the individual, and that's why I say voluntary. It needs to be that individual and that individual only.
And are they sound mind enough at that point to have made that decision? It's almost like a do not resuscitate order.
No, absolutely, I agree.
Right,
and that's exactly how it should be treated. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, do you think we'd ought to let people go and tell them that we thank them till they're better paid?